I feel all of you that are preparing for fellowships right now.
The acceptance rate is usually around 20%. It's not that high.
Yeah. It feels heavy, especially going into fellowship season. A lot of times you feel if I don't get a fellowship, what am I gonna do? On P1 year, I knew I want to do industry. I knew I want to do HUR, market access. So I really prepared for it. And I'm actually the first market access fellow at Novo Nordisk. Once you get the fellowship, you realize, I shouldn't have put so much pressure on myself.
Is a fellowship the only way that you can get into industry?
No. There's definitely a lot of ways to get into the industry.
Then why do the fellowship then?
Yeah, so
Welcome to Pharma's Pathways, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about fellowship programs. This episode specifically is for people who are on the brink of their next step. They don't know if they want to go the residency route or the fellowship route, and this is going to help make that a little bit more clear for them. It's for people who have already decided fellowship is their next step, and they just need the tools to make sure that they are going to be a very competitive candidate through that process. So I have here Gabriel Henderson. He is actually completing his first and last year of fellowship, and he is a fellow for market access, specifically within the industry. Without further ado, I introduce to you Gabriel Henderson.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the intro, and I'm really glad to be here.
I like to bring people who have credibility or have gone through the process and they've been successful in it. You're fresh into that fire too, so you have a good memory of what it was like as a student going through that process.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah,
Definitely do.
so we're capturing your story, your memories, your wisdom at a really good point. Okay, so I gave them like the high level review of what you're doing right now, but can you give us a brief background about your journey into your current fellowship? Yeah, a little bit about where you're from, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, I'm Gabriel Henderson. I am a graduate of the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, and I have a background in public health science from University of Maryland College Park. So during this process, during that time period in pharmacy school, I was really deciding what type of career as a pharmacist I wanted to have. And I stumbled upon industry. And by learning about the different, opportunities that were in industry, both with work-life balance and the work that is done, I felt like it really aligned with what I wanted to do in my career. By the P4 year, by the end of the P4 or end of the P3 year, I really decided that market access was something I wanted to pursue.
Okay.
So I pursued a market access role and I landed a fellowship at Novo Nordisk as a 1-year program. I'm actually the first market access fellow at Novo Nordisk, and I'm coming up on 10 months of the fellowship. So it's been going pretty well so far.
Okay, so for those who are watching, like they're in the early stages, and they're like, what is the difference between a fellowship and a residency? Can we just start there at the fundamentals? What is a fellowship, and why are people considering fellowships?
Yeah, so a fellowship is a 1 to 2 year postgraduate industry training program, right? That program is basically trying to get a pharmacy student prepared to enter into the industry within whatever functional area you're interested in.
And industry means the pharmaceutical industry.
Correct.
Okay, and a functional area means what?
Oh, so a functional area is basically the type of work that you're doing within the pharmaceutical industry. Let's start out with commercial, since I'm part of commercial. Commercial could include market access, right? It can include marketing, business development. Those are all commercial roles. Then you also have medical. Medical can include scientific communication, medical affairs, medical information. Those are all under that medical umbrella, right? You also have R&D. That can include clinical development, late stage, early stage. That all can be under that R&D.
Is that research and discovery development?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have regulatory affairs. So regulatory affairs is usually for FDA applications, for new drug applications, or any changes to any drugs. They also do compliance, making sure that whatever we're putting out externally passes FDA regulations, right? It's not saying anything that would get us sued. And then there's also there's a lot of different fellowships. There's policy and advocacy, right? Patient advocacy, right? There's public affairs opportunities. There's even public health, fellowship. So there's a lot of different opportunities available for fellows.
HEOR is bridging kind of like the clinical policy and public health together.
Yeah, and it's bridging, commercial too. So HUR usually sits under medical, but they work really close with market access. Because HUR research feeds into the payer marketing materials that we're using. So we may use that research to highlight why this product should be higher on the formulary or not, or why it's a better product than the competition.
Can you just explain what market access is, like what you're doing?
Yeah. So
Mm.
essentially, market access, our responsibility is to gain access for the patient, to make sure that patient, when they're prescribed the medication, can purchase that medication. Can It's at a price that the patient is
Affordable.
affordable to purchase. It's on a formulary tier that allows the patient to access it. So that market access includes copay cards. It includes partnerships. I mean, I know you guys have seen Roe, him and hers, those commercials. A lot of times there's partnerships with those pharmaceutical companies that would sit under market access because that's allowing for access to the product, right?
Okay.
So that all sits under that market access umbrella.
Is there an early commitment for the second year, or are you applying all over again for a second year fellowship?
So for a 2-year program, once you are accepted, you're there for 2 years.
Okay, great.
So you don't have to reapply for a 2-year program, which is a good thing
So you know,
for your stability.
so when you're applying to fellowships, you know whether you're applying for 1 year at that time or 2 years.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, that's different.
Yeah.
You're locked in for 2 years.
Yeah, you're locked in.
Okay, so
Unless
you better know ahead of time.
unless you leave early.
Okay. So is a fellowship the only way that you can get into industry? Is that usually the only way that you can get your foot in the door right from graduation?
No, no. There's definitely a lot of ways to get into the industry. And actually, when you meet a lot of pharmacists within the pharmaceutical industry, a lot of them have, diverse backgrounds. A lot of them come from clinical backgrounds. You can also have a direct industry role, right? So not doing a fellowship at all, just getting an entry role into the industry. A lot of them have government backgrounds or managed care roles as well. They can do a managed care residency, working for a health plan and enter the industry. So there's a multitude of different ways to enter into the pharmaceutical industry.
Hmm. And so then why do the fellowship then?
Yeah. So the fellowship, I would summarize it as it's the most direct way into a industry role, right? If you're going clinical, you're probably going to do a residency. You're going to practice, whatever specialty you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can probably transition over to an industry role, right? But there's specific roles that clinical pharmacists usually enter into. But if I'm interested in, for example, I was interested in market access, really, unless you have managed care experience, it's really difficult to get an industry role without that bridge. So the fellowship is like a straightforward bridge in order for you to get into a role without having to take any detours
Yeah.
in your career.
Okay. So similar to residency, 'cause that's what I can pull from my experience.
Yeah,
They feel more comfortable knowing that you have the experience, the knowledge, to be able to hit the ground running as best as possible early on in your career.
definitely.
Okay. Good to know. And so when I was researching into fellowships, I saw that the acceptance rate is usually around 20%.
Yeah, it would be less than that.
It's not that high.
Yeah.
The residency, I think it's like in the low 80s or mid 80s. Fellowship is 20%. That's serious. So
Yep.
how did you get around the mindset of like going into such a competitive applicant pool to make sure that you took this next step? Because I'm sure that's a little bit daunting.
Yes, it definitely is. And I've been working towards market access my entire pharmacy schooling. So since my P1 year, I know I want to do industry. I knew I want to do HUR market access. So I really prepared for it, right? But it is really daunting because a lot of times you feel if I don't get a fellowship, what am I going to do? Right. And you don't want to usually have to go to your plan B or plan C option. It makes it very, it feels heavy, especially going into fellowship season or entering into fellowship season now. So I definitely, I feel all of you that are preparing for fellowships right now. But yeah, that's how you feel going into it. Once you get the fellowship, you realize, I shouldn't have put so much pressure on myself.
Yeah. Well, that's easy to say when
No,
you come out and you ain't come out on the other side. Yeah. So we're definitely going to address you were in the 20%. So obviously you did something correctly. So we're going to circle back and figure out like what tips you have for others who need to make it to that 20%. But before we do that, I want you to just kind of like break down the landscape of what it looks like to be in a fellowship program for our listeners, like just seeing like the different structures, because I know that varies from a residency. I can just share. So they have some contrast. A residency program, you are usually rotating through different clinical experiences every single month. And that could be changing every 4 to 6 weeks. And then you're also covering longitudinal projects in the interim. And then also you might be expected to pick up some staffing responsibility on the weekends. So that's the residency structure. How is the fellowship structure?
Yeah, so the fellowship structure, there's different structures based off of what program you enter into, right? So the first, I guess, three main things I would say would be there's the function. So whether it's commercial, medical, regulatory, research and development, so on and so forth. You also have if it's school affiliated or non-affiliated. And then the last thing I think it would be, is it with a pharmaceutical company or is it with a vendor? And then I also mentioned if it's school affiliated or non-affiliated. So some of the big programs out there, such as the Rutgers RPIF. So there's a Rutgers Industry Fellowship Program. There's the Northeastern University Fellowship Program. Those are school affiliated programs, meaning that the pharmaceutical company is basically contracting with the school to host the fellowship. So you're part of a cohort, right? So your cohort could be 100 to 200 different fellows from all across the country working at different pharmaceutical companies, doing different functions. So you're basically in school again. It's like, your P1 year. You have all these different students from all these different backgrounds, right? And then you have non-affiliated. So non-affiliated means you are directly an employee for that company, right? You're not affiliated with a school,
Yes.
right? And both of those have differences as well that we could go into. And then I think I also mentioned whether it was a vendor or whether it was a pharmaceutical company. So vendors are usually hired by pharmaceutical companies, right? So give you an example. In market access, let's say we are creating a payer marketing material. We may hire a vendor or a consulting company in order to create that material for us, right? So if you do a fellowship for a vendor, you're going to be doing a lot of hands-on work with creating materials, maybe doing studies, doing qualitative interviews for that pharmaceutical company. And you may work for different pharmaceutical companies within that vendor. You're going to do projects for different companies, whoever you're contracted with. It's a great program because you get exposure to a lot of different companies, right? Um,
Mm,
if I work with a consulting company, they could be working with so many different companies doing different projects, working on different therapeutic areas with different goals. So you learn a lot fast. The reason vendors, kind of get, looked at a little differently than working for an actual pharmaceutical company is that when you are done with your fellowship, you can either continue to work for the vendor, but if your main goal is to get into a pharmaceutical company, that transition may be a little more difficult because on your resume, you don't have direct industry experience. But as we said earlier, the acceptance rate for fellowship is 20%. So I don't look down on any fellowship because getting one is hard enough. And getting that experience really opens the door to so many different opportunities.
yeah. These are big differences. You guys have a lot more to consider than we do, and me as residents. So can you go into the difference between the benefit of a 1 year versus a 2 year? Like, why do some people want to do 2 years versus one?
Yeah. So a 1 year looks very appealing for most people coming out of school, right? Because after your 1 year, you're hopefully getting a full-time role. And after you get that full-time role, you're making full-time salary, right? So that's why 1 year is usually, that's the big pro of it. You get to make a higher salary faster. But it also comes with cons, right? Especially in this job market, right? You get 1 year to build up as much experience as you can, and you're competing with 1 year fellows, 2 year fellows. You're competing with people that are trying to switch jobs, people that may have been laid off.
Yeah.
You're competing with people from clinical that are coming into the industry, and you're competing with, um, depending on your fellowship, right? For example, in market access, just because in market access, it's not only PharmDs. You could have a marketing degree and are very successful in market access. So meaning that you're competing with a lot of different people. So that's why 2 year fellowship does have that, pro. You're gonna have the ability to build up as much experience as possible. And then when you enter into those manager, senior manager, associate director applications, you fit the criteria, right? You have the experience, the work experience, so that you're not automatically overlooked.
That's important. Okay, and we have an episode with Ashley Saunders, who's an HEOR, another functional area within industry. Shameless plug to go watch that episode. But she also shared that she was thinking about like the months that would just automatically kind of have downtime and not be expected to be doing the work, like Christmas, for example.
Yeah.
The companies are a little bit quieter, whereas clinical, that does not matter. Like if you're in a hospital, you're there all year round, doesn't matter what day it is. So there's differences in that. And so she was also considering if even if it's a 12-month program, I'm technically maybe only getting about 9 months of solid, like I'm hands-on experience.
To Ashley's point, right? If you look at a 1-year fellowship, you're onboarding, let's say 3 months, right? You onboard for 3 months, you're working, and then of course you're going to start applying internally and externally before your fellowship ends because you don't want to be without a job. So she said 9 months. I would say it's even shorter than that, right? Because let's say if you start in July, you have 3 months from then. That's October. You're going to work. He's talked about the Christmas shutdown, company shutdown around that time, and not a lot of work is getting done at the end of the year. And then you're probably going to start applying 2 3 months minimum before the fellowship ends. So you really don't have a full 9 months of experience on your resume. So that really makes the 1 year difficult if you're not kept internally, if you're not
Yeah.
absorbed by your company.
Yeah. You shared this with me before we started recording, but there can be layoffs in standalone programs as well. And that can be one of the reasons why people might want to stay away from that area. Can you go into that?
Yes, layoffs is a possibility within the fellowship. I don't want to overstate it. When it comes to a fellowship, you're not getting paid like a full-time employee. So if you just thought like if you're HR, if you're the CEO of a company, if you really wanted to make a dent in, how much you're paying to your employees, the fellow isn't on the first list of people you want to lay off. But yeah, that definitely is a possibility for a standalone company. So that is something to look out for. Like we said earlier, fellowship is 20%. I wouldn't go into it saying, "Oh, I could get laid off if I could," because the chance of that happening is really, really slim. If a layoff does happen, everybody's shocked because that speaks to, I guess, the fellowship program, but also can speak to the company's health. But it usually never happens, so I wouldn't look too much into it.
All right. And that is more specific to like a direct industry job, not a school affiliated. Right.
Yeah, so school affiliated usually are safe from that because the money is already paid to the school.
Okay.
So school affiliated usually aren't affected by layoffs.
You started going into like the structure. You said the first 3 months are going to be like onboarding.
Hmm.
We can start shifting into what life is like as a fellow. So going through that 1 year, like just give us kind of like a look back. Of course, what you experienced, but then also what you know on a general level about what you might be experiencing throughout that duration.
Yeah. So in your first couple months, I would say the first 3 months at a job, you're usually onboarding, right? So you're doing a lot of the e-learnings, learning what you can say, what you can't say legally, compliance. They want to make sure that, you understand the ramifications of what you're putting out there. You're also going to be learning about your products. You're going to be learning about your team, what your team's current goals are. So a lot of that is you're just onboarding. Like if you started any new job, you're just getting a layout of the land.
Yeah.
After that, um, your preceptor is probably going to start giving you projects, right? They're going to slow walk you into getting projects. Use most of the time for that first half of your fellowship, you're probably going to be doing your projects along with your preceptor, right? So you're going to be in meetings with your preceptor. They're going to be coaching you, also allowing you to lead. And then after that, on the back half of your fellowship, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, you're going to have more ownership over the projects that you're doing. Usually you're doing multiple projects. And of course, this also depends on the needs of the business, right? So they're not going to create work for you just to, say that you did something. But a good fellowship should have projects that the manager or preceptor had already thought about, that this could be something that the fellow could help out with, or this work is needed and our fellow would be a good person to do that project or to complete that assignment.
For you personally, like what was your biggest like culture shock coming from student to fellow? How did that work out for you?
I think the setting was the biggest culture shock to me. When you're working clinically, whether community or in a hospital, you're kind of, you're used to that setting, but this is a corporate environment, right? That I think was unique. The networking that needed to be done. I feel like in the industry, it's heavy. You're really supposed to put yourself out there. You're supposed to set up one-on-ones. You're supposed to meet with different people with different backgrounds because you really want to put your name out there. You want people to recognize that you're a fellow, that you're interested in these different topics. And that will allow you to, one, stay with the company or to gain new projects throughout your fellowship.
So you can have other pharmacists in the company that know you're interested in doing something else that you might not be getting in your fellowship program, get like put you on another project.
Yeah, as long as now you can't just go rogue and say I'm doing something else, and this has nothing to do with my. No, we have you here to learn a certain thing.
Okay.
But as long as your preceptor and manager signs off on it, they usually encourage you to expose yourself to different opportunities. Or I'll give you an example. I'm in market access. Market access is a lot of different, you know, positions that I could do after my fellowship. I could be in payer marketing. I could be in pricing contracting. I could do a field role. I can be in uh, reimbursement for, for provider, for patients. Like there's so many different avenues within market access that are available. So it's important that you expose yourself to those opportunities early on, right? So that you can kind of picture in your brain what you want to do
Hmm.
once your fellowship's over.
On an average week after we're out of the onboarding process, what does that look like? When you're meeting with people, I guess we should also talk about this. Is this on site or is this remote? Is it hybrid? Is it on you to kind of set your own schedule and just get things done? Or are you supposed to be online or in office from certain times?
Yeah, so that's really dependent on your team and your company. Most fellowships, I would say, are hybrid, but it all depends on your team. I know I actually watched Ashley's video, so you guys should definitely check it out. But Ashley talked about how she's remote, right? There's some roles, like I'm in a market access role, I'm hybrid. Most of my teams that I've talked to, most of the market access fellows I know, they wouldn't be remote. So it depends on what department you're working in and then also your company. So some companies make people come in 5 days a week, so they probably expect their fellow to be in 5 days a week.
Okay.
I didn't mention about the school affiliated, some of the pros and cons of that. When it comes to school affiliated, you're probably expected to do some extracurricular activities, right? That could be teaching at the school that you're affiliated with, teaching a class. It could be promoting the school, the fellowship program, or the school affiliate program
Like a conference
at a
or okay.
conference, speaking at your alma mater, or speaking at other schools to speak about the fellowship, hosting the information sessions. So these are all things that are accompanied with a school. But also, they have a lot of team building, cohort building activities for the cohort. You get to network with different companies. A lot of the preceptors and managers may come to events where you may meet somebody from another company as well. That's within your function area or not. So there's a lot of great opportunities, I think, within the school affiliated program as well, that sometimes are overshadowed. Sometimes people are like, I don't want to do all that stuff, but there's a lot of pros to that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I do see how that is kind of more of like an extension of pharmacy school. Now we're going to shift into how to secure the bag with a fellowship. Excuse me. I hope you don't mind if I cut in for a moment.
Hurry up.
Number one, thank you for watching. I hope you're learning something new in this episode. Number two, which is the reason I'm here, is if you don't mind, could you be so kind and like this video or hit the subscribe button?
I mean, I've always subscribed.
By subscribing, you're letting YouTube know that my content is providing you value, and that ultimately helps the channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these conversations. You can also subscribe to the Pharmacy Pathways newsletter to get access to exclusive episode content. Newsletters go out in the same week of the episode. You'll receive a structured summary of each interview, expanded guest bios, and exclusive sneak peeks of future episodes. Subscribe at pharmacypathways.org. Link is in the description. Oh, and one more thing.
Hurry up!
If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Okay, let's get you back to the show. So thank you for joining us. If you missed part one of this conversation, we just took some time to break down what a fellowship program is, what kind of fellowship programs are out there, and why you might choose one over the other. And then he was giving us some insight on what it's like being a fellow. So we're going to pick up the conversation and now talk about like how to be a competitive candidate. We know we want to apply to a fellowship. So when do we start that process of research and kind of, getting our resume, our experience prepared for that as well, and how we go through the interview process all the way until we hopefully hear that we got the job, that we got the role. So what are you recommending for someone PY1, PY2, PY3? What should they be doing?
Yeah. So as a P1, I would say the most important thing for you to do is making a transition into pharmacy school, right? Right now, worrying about industry and what role you want to get and where you want. I think it's more important that you're able to make that step because, as you know, stepping into pharmacy school, it requires different skills. It makes you polish up on skills that you thought you were strong at.
Yeah.
You realize, oh, I had some gaps in how much I studied, or
Yes.
so that's the most important thing. Your P1 years, you want to make sure that you're able to graduate. So you want to start out, strong with your didactic courses.
Mm-hmm.
While you're in your P1 year, though, you can start to learn about different organizations at school, right? That's something that all, first year students learn about. They learn about SNAFA, they learn about AMCP, they learn about IPHO, along with all the other, organizations that are available at your school. So I think that's the first thing you should do your first year.
Okay.
Going from your first year into the second year, that's when you want to start building out your resume, right? So the easiest thing I think any student possibly could do is get a research experience, right? Research experience, and I would say, joining e-boards for different orders. But research experience is something that most schools have. Most schools have, HUR adjacent programs within their school system. They have people doing clinical research, lab work. So those are things that I think any student, doesn't matter what function area you go into, that always looks good on your resume that you were able to do things outside of school.
Yes.
All right. So getting research experience, joining those local orgs, because by joining those local organizations and maybe getting an e-board role as a historian or grassroots advocacy, an entry-level role within the e-board, one, it allows you opportunities to move up the e-board, but also you get to attend general body meetings.
Okay.
So it exposes you to different career paths within pharma. It exposes you to the functional areas, as we mentioned, learning about the different areas. So you can start, saying, would I be interested in that? So that's what I would do your P2 year, getting the research, joining local orgs, applying to internships.
Okay.
Any role you get, it always stands out if you have industry experience already. So applying to internships, co-ops, I think that's always a plus, and that sets you above any other student if you have those experiences.
Okay. Nice.
All right, and then going to your P3 year, that's when you need to start nailing down what functional area you want to do, right? That's when you can start looking into mentorship opportunities, right? I was privileged to be selected for the PILS mentorship program, PILS Protege. It's the Pharmacy Initiative Leaders program. And that program really helped me because it gave me a mentor that had went through the process already, that did a fellowship, that was already in the industry. And she really guided me in creating my CV, reaching out for letters of recommendations to faculty and to managers from my work experience, preparing for the interview process, right? All of those things, I think, set me apart from other people or other students that were applying to the fellowship program. That's P2, P1, P2, P3. Besides that, I think you should be good. If you nail all of those things, you're in the top 5% of students, I feel.
Whoa. Okay. That's a high number. Do pharmaceutical companies allow shadowing?
So interestingly enough, I was a part of AMCP while I was at school, and we had a shadowing experience that was available, right?
Right.
And during that shadowing experience, it basically paired you with an alumni that was maybe part of AMCP or just went to University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, and it was either for a day or for a week. They basically talked to you about the day-to-day of being in the industry, whether they were a fellow or whether they already were in a full-time role. So I think that was really helpful. Just give me exposure. It's not something I would put on my resume
Yeah.
per se, but it was something that let me know, oh, this is something I can see myself doing. I can envision myself doing. And it also allowed me to learn a lot more about the different aspects of the industry.
Nice. So it sounds like the shadowing opportunities are usually aligned with the trusted organization or
Yeah.
affiliate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even to I don't want to keep plugging AMCP, but I was
No.
really involved in it
Or
in school.
keep plugging it in.
So they also had a program where they actually picked students from different areas of the country to fly to a pharmaceutical company. And in that process, you stayed out there for 2 days. You got to meet different people from that company in different functional areas. You were paired with a mentor as well, who I still talk to this day. So those are great opportunities that are only available if you're active in your organization and you're aware of them.
Yeah.
So
That's good. That's really good. Just giving like the foundational timeline of your P4 year when you know that you're supposed to be applying and you're going through your last year of pharmacy school. How are you approaching that last year of pharmacy school and all the way from like summer prep, I guess? We'll start before the year starts. Summer prep into your fourth year.
okay, so prep. Honestly, if I can be honest, you should probably start P3, around your P3 year when you're making your schedule for your P4 year. If you already knew, right? If you already knew you want to do a fellowship, that's what I did. And the reason I say that is because as the fellowship program or fellowship interviews have changed over the years, it's more of a marathon now than a sprint. Before COVID, students would go into midyear and they would just interview the entire time. Now you're going to be interviewing through September, October, November. Choosing what rotations you do during that time period is very strategic to allow you to get the best opportunity to prepare for those interviews. Right. So I just want to preface that before we talk about.
Okay.
But when it comes to your P4 year, I think you would start in May. In May, that's when you want to nail down the one, possibly two functional area that you're interested in. Right.
Okay. We're talking May leaving our third year.
Yes.
Okay.
So May leaving your third year. So around the time you're starting your first block rotation, that's when you want to nail down what functional area do I want to apply to.
Okay.
All right. And during that summer during that summer period before in your P4 year, you really want to start researching the type of fellowships that are available in that functional area, right? That were offered last year, the type of companies that offer those type of fellowships, right? You also want to start building your CV, right? So building your CV, researching the different fellowship opportunities that are available,
Mm-hmm.
and start constructing your cover letter, right? So those are the main 2 to 3 things I think you need to do during that summer timeline.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, when you say building your CV, what do you mean when you say?
Yeah, when I say building in your P4 year, your experiences are basically baked in, right? So I'm saying building the structure of the CV, right? In relevant industry experience, your research experience, work experience, leadership.
Okay. So
Qualifications.
we're formatting and we're brainstorming what's the best way to market myself based on what I've done and what my interests are.
Right.
Okay.
You're going to start during that time period. You're going to start reaching out to people to review your CV, right? You usually want fellows to review it, people that are in the industry currently, people that are maybe alumni that have went into the industry, so they can give you some tips and tricks best for whatever functional area you're applying for, so your CV presents well.
Do you have to identify the functional area first before you look for the fellows? Like, what platform did you use to research? Industrypharmacist.org?
Yeah, so that's why that's the first thing you do, because first you have to have a goal for what you're trying to do. Like as you mentioned, you can use IPHO. They list different fellowships that are available. YouTube. So YouTube, there's a lot of content creators that are creating information about the different functional areas, looking at people like yourself that are providing bridges for students to learn about different opportunities within the pharmaceutical industry and, outside of that as well. You can, of course, just use AI just to look up
Very true.
the different functional areas.
Okay.
Your school, AMCP, IPHO, these are different school orgs that cater to people that are interested in non-traditional career paths within pharmacy, can provide you a lot of those background, descriptions of what is commercial, what is medical affairs, what is regulatory affairs, right? So that's honestly what I would use as well. Use that to give you a good baseline of what is available. And when I say school, that could be reaching out to alumni from your school, reaching out to faculty at your school. They all can provide you a good understanding of what you're possibly entering into.
All right. So we're utilizing the World Wide Web for our groundwork. And then we have specific organizations that give you detailed information on the areas, the different programs, and then you identify that, go to the program website, do additional research, find out who the people are, the fellows are, perhaps connect with them on LinkedIn.
The first thing I would do is look on LinkedIn when it comes to knowing who the fellows are, right? Because most fellows post on LinkedIn that I've accepted this fellowship in December and January time period after they've accepted. So that's a way for you to familiarize yourself with who are the current fellows and what companies they work for, so on and so forth. Also, most of the fellows post about their fellowship brochure showing what their company is offering within which functional area, right? So let's say for Novo Nordisk,
Okay.
right, I want to do market access fellow. So I'm going to look up market access fellow on LinkedIn, and that will show you different, fellows that are market access fellow at different companies.
Okay.
You can look at, school affiliated fellowships. You can look at Rutgers. They have a plethora of fellowship opportunities available. You can look at Northeastern University. They have a lot of different fellowship partnerships they have with companies that will show all the brochures from the previous years, right?
Okay.
When they post new brochures, they'll show that in the fall. he would post, we're offering a fellowship in market access, we're offering a fellowship in regulatory affairs. So those are the fellowship brochures that are posted during that time period. That's a good way for you to understand what was at least offered the previous year.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Fellowships change. Companies decide to, take some fellowships down, open up new opportunities for the upcoming year. But that'll give you a good understanding of, okay, this company offered a market access fellowship the previous year. They'll probably be offering one the following year.
Okay.
Yes.
Send them some messages. Be on the lookout for things that they post because, as you shared earlier, it's kind of the fellowship's part of their responsibility is to make sure they're getting awareness out as well to future students who want to be in the program.
And to add to that point, when you reach out to fellows, you got to understand these are people that you're possibly going to be working with in the future. So you want to present yourself well, right? Meaning when you reach out to them, it should be on a professional level. You shouldn't ask questions about salary, because those are things that you may be able to find just by doing your research, right? Additionally, if you've done your background knowledge, there's some things that you should already know about the fellowship. You should already know about the program. So you want to really tailor your questions to who you're speaking to, right? They should be questions that that fellow could answer. What I mean by that, let's say it is July and you're reaching out to a fellow. If that fellow just started, right, their fellowship in June or May or in July, they're not going to know as much as a second-year fellow. So those questions need to be tailored to that person. That first-year fellow probably can answer more about the process better than the second-year fellow.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be able to say, oh, what projects have you worked on? Oh, I just got here. I don't have any projects to work on yet, right? So you really have to make sure you're, presenting yourself well and doing your due diligence before you reach out to somebody externally.
That's a very good strategy that people need to keep in mind. So we're thinking through the questions that we have and who is probably the best person to ask that question. Okay, great. We're collecting questions. We've done some research. What are we looking for before we determine that this is a good program in general?
Right. So when I was going through my process, I wanted to make sure that the program was established, right? That they'd had fellows before, or that the program had been there for a few years and, it wasn't something new. Not to say that a new fellowship is bad, as I'm always going to reference this. You said it's 20%, right? So getting a fellowship is hard enough, especially so if you're really picky, it's going to be even harder. But there is trust in knowing that this is an established program. You want to see where do those fellows end up after the fellowship? Are they staying with the company? Are they going to another company? What title are they getting after? Are they staying within the functional area that they trained in? Right, those are all key signs. Oh, okay. One, the person probably enjoyed the fellowship because they stayed with the company. Have they moved up if they were in the fellowship a few years ago? Those are all like key insights that you can gain just from, looking on LinkedIn. Speaking with people also can fill a lot of gaps. Because I remember, for example, I spoke with a fellow. She spoke really highly of her fellowship, but they just didn't have headcount for the upcoming year. And she was able to go to another company, but her actual program really helped her land that role at another company. They used their network and prepared her really well to go to another company. There's also more insight you can gain just from setting up one-on-ones. But point being is you want to make sure that the whole purpose of the fellowship is to get a full-time role. So you want to see that those fellows are getting full-time roles after.
What else is important to look into about the quality of a program or whether it's a good match for you as an individual?
Yeah. The next thing I would look at is the company strength. Like, how's the company doing with the products that they currently have, with their pipeline? Is the company growing? Have they recently had layoffs? Are there headwinds that are coming within the company that is publicly available? That's something I would look into. Now, I wouldn't put too much stock in that because, like I said, as a fellow, it's really hard for you to get laid off, right? Because you're not making that much at the company compared to full-time employees, and you have an end date. You're there for a year or 2 years, so usually don't try to get rid of you. But it is important if you possibly want to be retained. Well, they have to have headcount for you, so that means they need to be growing, right? So I think it's very important that you look at the company's strength as well.
So when I was building out my search for residency programs, I'm very type A, so I had an Excel sheet.
Yep, same.
And I had, maybe it's good for us to talk about the different things on the Excel sheet that you were tracking. For me, I was tracking salary. Also the different experiences they had in the program, if I was drawn to them. I also like to see like their mission, their values, their culture, to see if those aligned with mine as well.
Yeah.
These were things that were personally important to me, even if the program was strong. What about you? What was on your Excel sheet?
One, personal is the most important thing. All the stuff I listed before, it doesn't matter if you're not comfortable at that place, if you're not comfortable in that state where you live. So I'm really glad you brought up personal. On my Excel spreadsheet, I had what the functional area was, right? I had the salary. I had if they were offering relocation. I was,
Meaning like helping fund you to move?
yep.
Hmm.
I was, of course, putting the location as well, right? Because you're going to be, like you said, uprooting yourself, moving to another state, maybe to another coast. So those are some things that you have to sit down with yourself and decide, do I want to do that? For example, for me, I did not want to move to the West Coast. I didn't apply to any West Coast companies for West Coast programs. So that's something that, you need to put your non-negotiables down and have those things listed on your Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. When it comes to getting that application strong, you said that in the fourth year, your PY4, you are now working on the marketing of yourself. And a large part of that is your CV, your curriculum vitae, your resume, and your cover letter. How are these committees looking at these items? Like, I know that you haven't been on the committee yourself, but like based on what you were told and
Yep.
what you've experienced so far, but like what are definite no-nos?
I think a definite no-no would be, of course, grammatic errors. So grammatical errors, just basic, just polish, right? A lot of times people, especially if they don't feel like they have a lot of good experiences, they may over embellish or add a lot of detail that may not be necessary. And it makes your CV really long. Your CV shouldn't really go over 3 pages max, right?
Really, for
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah, because you have to remember a fellow's probably reviewing this CV, a resume, right? So if I'm reviewing this resume and we have a lot of people applying,
Mm-hmm.
the fellow's also still working. They're still onboarding. They're still doing their own projects. From the first page or two, you can tell if this applicant would be a strong applicant for your program. If you have 4 or 5 pages, that whatever's on that fourth and fifth page probably isn't going to be looked at that strongly, right? So you really want to make it concise to the point. I should be able to look at your resume or CV and say, oh yeah, this person has the experiences we're looking for this fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And that also is why you should reach out to a fellow in the summertime. So I met with Gabriel in the summertime. I remember him. He spoke really well. He really had a good understanding of the program and what he was interested in. So it makes you stand out immediately.
Wonderful. All right, and grades. How do we feel about GPA?
So I can speak for myself. I never had to disclose my GPA at all during the fellowship process.
No transcripts?
No, I mean, as long as you graduate, you're fine.
Right. Oh,
So
nice.
there are some fellowships that may, for example, require you to be licensed, right? Some fellowships may require that. Some of them may require GPA, but for the most part, the majority of fellowships, they're not going to ask about your GPA. So,
Well, that's a relief
yeah.
for me. Residency, that is not the case. That GPA is important. Ashley, who we keep referencing, she found out that she wanted to circle back to HEOR like 3 months before she needed to submit her application. May not necessarily, people in her position may not necessarily had the opportunity to get industry experience or research experience. And so, what are other things that you could have done along the line as a student that can still be packaged or translated into going into an industry setting?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Most of your experiences as a pharmacist can be translated to your fellowship. I'll give you an example. I worked throughout pharmacy school and throughout undergrad as a pharmacy technician at my local pharmacy. I experienced patients not being able to afford their medication, right? Having to use copay cards, having to do step therapies, prior authorizations. That's all part of market access, right? That's all transferable skills. That's all of understanding that a program may be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
That's why PharmDs are being valued in other functional areas than previously thought of, right? A lot of times people think of medical affairs, MSLs, but that's why it's valuable to be in a commercial role because you have hands-on experience working with patients. So I think a lot of times people feel like, oh, if I don't have these experiences, I can't get a fellowship. That's not true, but it's how you present it. You have to show that skill is valuable within whatever you're applying to, and it can be a driving force for why you're interested in that, program.
Yes. Very good. So people shouldn't be discouraged if
No.
they haven't checked all the boxes and leadership things, like you said, joining the boards of organizations and showing that they're taking the initiative and involved in things outside of just the going to school.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. When we're thinking about like subtle signals on the application that's kind of differentiating people who are casually interested versus those where it's clear that they have been very intentional about positioning themselves to be competitive. You said some people they look at the first two pages and they know like, oh yeah, like they're quality candidate.
Yeah.
What are those things that are popping out compared to the CV that's not?
Well, the things that are popping out are industry experience, right? Did you do an internship? Did you do a rotation industry related? That immediately sticks out, right? Because that means I know this person has experience working in an industry environment. Research experience, especially when you're going to things such as HEOR, that those are a given. Like if you have research experience, that stands out to somebody that doesn't have that experience. It could also be or leadership experience, right? If you are president of AMCP or you're heavily involved in IPHO, or if you're heavily involved in SNAFA, or any of the orgs, honestly, that stands out because that means that you can manage multiple projects. You can manage your time, which is something that's necessary to be in the pharmaceutical industry. Those are the main things that immediately stick out. And then, of course, if you have a dual degree, right? If you're getting an MPH, if you're getting an MBA, that stands out as well because those are applicable to whatever functional area you're applying to.
Awesome. What about community service volunteering?
Yeah, that and I'm glad you brought that up. That's important too because the main thing, and that was great because the main thing that you want to do during that summer is you need to have down your why. You have to build a story about why are you interested in the industry? It can't just because, oh, I like the work-life balance. I don't want to stand up all day. That's not going to get you a fellowship. You have to be able to provide real reasons. And the reason I relate that to community services, you could see how being in the industry or working or seeing how pharmaceutical companies affect a patient getting their medication could inspire you to pursue this route. So when it comes to community service, yes, it's definitely applicable, especially if you're applying to, for example, policy and advocacy, like that patient advocacy.
Oh yeah.
Doing community service is something that directly shows that you have experience working directly with patients.
Mhm.
So yeah, like I said, you can spend any experience you have towards your functional area, but you have to sit down with yourself and think, how did this affect my decision for what I'm trying to do?
Yeah, that's good to pick these apart a little bit more. Grades, you said, isn't as important, but what about the rotations that you've had? So our a resident CV is much longer usually than 3 to 4 pages because we're putting on all the clinical rotations we've done and bullet pointing underneath of those, and that adds up.
Yeah.
So when you're doing you're catering things to industry and rotations usually are not industry for the most part. Like you can request certain ones if your program has that and that's huge if it does. So are you just leaving off the clinical experiences, the community rotations, or do you list them but you don't have descriptive bullet points under each of them?
So that's a good point, and it's a case by case basis, right? Like I said, you don't want your CB to be 4 to 5 pages. So if it's a rotation that you can't find a way to relate it to what you're applying to, I wouldn't put it on there. And then you have to remember, fellowships, you're applying a little bit earlier than residencies. You're probably applying September. So you've probably only done 2 to 3 blocks.
That's true. Yeah.
So you don't have that much rotation or APPs to talk about. So I think that plays a role in the length of the CV. But those clinical rotations are applicable, right? Because a lot of times, if you're on a clinical rotation, you're seeing the different options that are available to the hospital to prescribe to the patient, right? You're seeing what the patient's bringing in from the outside. So all these things can, you're using your clinical knowledge, but it can apply to whatever functional area you're going into. You just have to spin it to fit your needs.
Awesome. And so the CV is the objective way to do that, and then the cover letter is the subjective way
Mhm.
to have a literary version of your why,
Yep.
what you've accomplished, how your experiences along the way have impacted you, and how they position you to be also helpful to the program.
Mhm.
So now we put together the application, it's submitted off, and we wait. And then when do we apply? And then when do we start getting some feedback if we have interviews yet?
Okay. So before we submit the application, the fellowship programs are usually going to have information sessions. So you should attend those, right?
Okay.
So let's say you've already met with a fellow, one of the fellows, or maybe both. Usually you should probably just meet with one during that summertime around July, August. Fellowship information sessions are usually August, September, right? This is a time where they're having the fellows speak about the program. They're having school affiliated, information sessions that you can attend as well. So you want to make sure you attend those to show your interest in the program. And then the applications, released. There's an application date and it releases. You want to try to apply as soon as possible. So that's why I'm telling you, have your CV ready, have your cover letter ready. I don't think I've mentioned it enough. Letter of recommendation. You should have already reached out to the faculty or whoever you want that letter of recommendation. Let them know what you want on that letter of recommendation, right? So that they speak highly and speak to the skill set that you want to highlight during your interview process.
And when should they be reaching out for those letters?
The letters should probably be during the summertime. The recommendation usually doesn't have to be done at the application timeline, but you should reach out to the person that you want to do the recommendation early on, just so they know.
Okay.
Right? Because if there's a lot of people at your school reaching out to that same person, that's a lot of letters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm just going to summarize. May has started. We are now working on our cover letter and our CV. As we're trending more into the summer, now we're at least letting our people know that we would like them to write a letter on our behalf.
Yeah.
And then you said in the fall, then you're having the fellowship panels and discussions meetings to.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When are the applications usually due?
The applications are due based off the program. That could be September though.
And then you can be interviewing up from September through November?
Yeah, it's up till December, honestly.
Up till December.
Yeah, up until midyear.
So are there different rounds of the interview process?
Yeah, there's usually 3, maybe max 4 rounds, right? So your first round is going to be with fellows, right? Maybe the first year and second year fellow. The second round is going to be with probably the preceptor. And then the third round will probably be a panel filled out with more people from the team, right? And you may have to do a presentation as well on top of that. So those are usually spaced out based off of the program.
And are these virtual or do you have to make travel plans while you're in school?
Oh, yeah. So the first 1 to 2 rounds are usually virtual,
Okay.
right? And that's, like I said, that's something that's different from previously. Before COVID, all 3 rounds would be at ASHP Midyear.
Yeah.
No longer. So those are all virtual. And that's why I said it's very important. The rotation that you choose during that time period is key. Because if you're at a rotation where they're going to have an issue with you stepping out to do an interview, or if, you're trying to prep and you need to focus on that rotation,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be difficult for you to be as a strong candidate as you want to be, present yourself as well as you want to be in an interview.
Yeah.
So you can get a rotation that's, remote or, somewhere where that they're going to be more flexible
Yeah.
and understanding of what you're trying to do, what your end goal is. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay, good. Being strategic. We do that. Residents do that for midyear.
Mm.
We have the option to, not residents, fourth years. You can put in some requests for which blocks you would prefer to be off. And if you make it known you're going to midyear, they will try to accommodate that. That's how it was for my institution. I don't know what others may be doing, but
We had an off block and we had one off block and then one like optional block that you could be off.
okay.
So I tried to use that. I mean, I used mine for internship during that time, but point being is I made sure that I had a relaxed, September, October, November.
Yes, that's good. That's a good strategy. Okay, so when we are going through the different rounds, how close are they happening from each other?
I would say they're maybe a week or 2 apart. Their third rounds may be in person. So the company may fly you out to interview in person. They may take you to dinner. So that's a nice thing that occurs. Yeah, they're usually a week or 2 apart.
Very nice. Are these usually the standard when they're paying for you to come out for the last interview?
Yeah, they usually pay for you. You don't have to pay for yourself. Now, you do have to pay for midyear if you go, but those third rounds, they pay for you if they're going to fly you out.
That's another stark contrast of residency interviews. And we'll touch on this, but the midyear, like there's a very different reason and why you're going to midyear now in 2026 versus pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Because if you are usually hearing before midyear, whether you have the position or not,
Mm-hmm.
why go to midyear? Especially if it's expensive, you know?
Yep.
So why might you go to midyear?
So, I've been saying this a lot. It's really case by case. You could get an offer from a non-affiliated school or a non-affiliated program before midyear. This is 2026. I would say that most of the school affiliated programs basically have a agreement that they're going to offer all on the same date, right? And that's usually probably during or a little bit after midyear.
Okay.
But those independent programs aren't part of that agreement, so they can offer you anytime during the process, right? So that's why some students may say, "Oh, I didn't go to midyear because I already accepted an offer. I didn't need to go." Additionally, since midyear doesn't have as much impact as it did before COVID, sometimes some of the fellowship programs or that fellow department may say, going to midyear isn't that important. You could save your money. If they like you, they probably like you. If they don't, they don't. Right. But some want you to be at midyear, and they'll say that we expect you to be at midyear. We would love to meet you in person. So that's a play by ear type of thing.
Okay. A judgment call.
Yeah.
Strategic judgment call.
Yeah, financial judgment call. I don't like that. If I'm really interested in a program and they want me at midyear and I can't afford to go.
Not ideal.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. But it's a I guess like that final strategic move that you have left in that process.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you don't show up and the other person they were looking at does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because by midyear time, you're probably done with your third rounds. They're down to 2 to 3 candidates,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, if one person shows up to midyear and another person doesn't, and they show interest,
That's a sign.
that could
That could
play a role.
the decision.
Yeah.
Let's talk about now the interview process. We talked kind of like the overarching like structure of it, but actually getting into the interviews and the interview prep. What separates candidates who interview well from those who maybe don't put out the strongest impression on their interviews?
Yeah. So preparation, practice really separates the people that do good in the interviews and don't, right? So the first thing I would say is anybody that's applying to a fellowship, majority of the time they're going to ask you, why this company? Why are you interested in this functional area? And tell me about yourself, right? They're going to ask you that regardless. So those are 3 answers that you should have. They're strong, should have strong, and they should be, catered to who you're applying for. When they say, why this company?
Yeah.
You can't use the same answer right? So, and then that why this company, you can showcase the research you've done, right? So I would start with those 3 questions, even during that summertime period. As you're going, you should be rehearsing those. You should have your tell me about yourself down. You should have why this company down. And you should have the different things you would change for each company. And you should say why this function area. Those are things that you should 100% be strong with and comfortable answering at the drop of a dime.
Yeah. And I remember but before we were recording, you told me that you can actually apply to more than one functional area.
Yeah.
So that just triggered that memory. But it's like those responses are definitely different when they say why this program, why this area.
Yeah. And to that point, if you are applying to different functional areas and they can see that you're applying to different functional areas, they're going to ask you, oh, I see you're applying to market access and regulatory affairs. Why are you applying to 2 different areas that are vastly different? And you have to be able to answer that. So, yeah,
So they can see who you're applying to.
if you're applying in the same program, for example, if I'm applying to a Rutgers program,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm applying to Novo Nordisk. Let's say I'm applying to Novo Nordisk and Merck and J&J.
Mm-hmm.
Those programs can see if it's in a Rutgers program, the programs you're applying to.
Okay. The school affiliated programs that have contracts with okay. That's tricky because normally you don't want that people to know like who you're applying to.
Yeah.
You're trying to date the schools without everybody knowing who you have your eyes on.
Yep.
That's a fine line to walk. And so how do you navigate we'll go back to the strategy, but how do you navigate the conversation where you are e- expressing genuine interest in one program, you know you also genuinely are interested in another?
Yeah. Well, you have to remember the fellows also have been in your shoes too. So they know that you're applying to different programs and you're talking to every program like they're your favorite program. You love them. I can't wait to work here. So they understand that. But it's a fine line, right? Because the fellows talk. I just said these fellows are all in a cohort. They all know each other. Their preceptors know each other. So you don't want to say, oh, this is my favorite company. I want to go with them to them, because then they're going to tell other fellows, right? And then let's say that company doesn't, you're not their top choice. Now you've already said, I want to go here. And the other companies are saying, oh, he doesn't want to come to us. So you've kind of ostracized yourself from the other opportunities. So you want to play it fair, right? That's what I would recommend. Play it fair. So you're interested in these companies. You have your reasons why you're interested in each company, and stick to that, right? To the end, because they're doing what's best for them. You should do what's best for you, right? So that's the way I would view that. And then a tip, if you are going to apply to different functional areas, maybe do it with different programs, different school affiliated programs.
So they can't see.
Yeah, so they can't see. So you don't even have to answer that question.
This is good stuff. This is good strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about the interview process, like the initial screenings to the final rounds, and how should they be approaching these things different? Because we said the first round is usually with the fellows.
Yep.
So we're probably going to prep differently for that than we are with our preceptor versus a presentation.
Yeah.
Can you do like a quick little touch point on how you prepare differently for each one?
Yeah. So if I'm interviewing with the fellows, they're going to ask you those 3 questions, right? They may ask you some situational questions as well, right? So that could be, how have you dealt with conflict? Or tell me a time where you had to lead a project, right? So you should answer those in the STAR format: situation, task, action, result. But the purpose is, when you're interviewing with fellows, they're going to ask you those baseline questions. As you dig deeper into the interview process, though, they're going to ask you more questions tailored to your functional area and to your resume. So they're going to take a look at your resume. They're going to ask you about this bullet point. Oh, I saw you led this research project. Your P3 year, P2 year, or your P1 year. Speak to it. What did you do? And you need to be able to speak about that project.
That's a part of the preparation.
Yes.
Studying your own.
Anything you put on there, you need to be able to speak to it. So if you can't speak to it, don't put it on there. If it's from your P1 year, you need to go look at those files and, refamiliarize yourself with what you did, so that.
And that also is good, so we don't over embellish on the what we write, and it can't speak to that same engagement what we did when we were there. Okay.
Yeah. And then also, I think a lot of times people go into the interview process, right? And let's say they say tell me about yourself, why this company, why this fellowship, and they answer that the first time at the first interview. But by the third time, you're like, I've answered this so many times. It's new people, right? And while the fellows took notes, while the second interview they may have took notes and told them about this candidate is a strong candidate, she's a strong candidate, you do need to present yourself and reintroduce yourself to that person. Establish who you are, why you're here. What you realize when you're working is that people are working while they're also doing this. So you're just a meeting on my calendar, right? Yeah,
It's the truth.
I may not get to thoroughly go through your resume or thoroughly go through all the notes for what the previous interviewer said. So you need to, remind them why you're here. Why didn't this person move on to the next round? Oh, because they know what they're talking about.
And I guess you shouldn't be assuming that the people have even everyone has read your CV.
Yeah.
Unless so be prepared to keep talking about those points as well. And anything else for the presentation? What are you normally doing the presentation on if you make it to that third stage?
Well, it honestly depends on the company. They could have you present on something that's related to the role you're applying to. It could be about something else. It could be about something that you like to do for fun. So usually it's something probably about 15 to 20 minutes with questions after. So you just have to be able to make a presentation. Usually it's PowerPoint, and speak to it and answer questions about it.
Okay.
So.
And that, because that's the third phase, you could likely be in a room in person doing that presentation.
Yeah, you could be in a room, you could be online, but yeah.
Okay, good for people to know. So what are ways that we can stand out in each mode? We have virtual and we have in person. And virtual some people like it because it reduces a little bit of the nerves that you have interviewing, but it also, I think, can be a disservice because it's an unspoken barrier where your personality may not get the opportunity to shine as much, or
Mhm.
other things. You don't get to have lunch with them like like the opportunity when you're on site.
Yeah.
And breaking bread with somebody forms relationships. So you have all these different things that can change the experience. So what are some competitive edges for the virtual setting to make yourself more memorable? Because that can be even harder to do on the screen.
So if you're in the virtual setting, the first thing that I think is important is that you've recorded yourself before, right? You've practiced. How do I look when I'm answering this question? How do I sound? Have I practiced being on Zoom or on Teams with somebody else? Do I do things during the process that could be off-putting? Do I look off to the side? Am I not, showing eye contact, even though you're not looking at somebody directly across from you? Am I able to interview without looking at my paper, right?
Or notes, yeah.
Yeah, or my Word document that's right up next, because people can tell if you're looking at your screen or you're reading something, right? So those are some things that just polish that can separate you virtually. But just interview wise in totality, I guess you would say asking good questions, right? Showing that you have enthusiasm and interest in the company. That definitely stands out. You can tell somebody that, like if somebody was talking to you, you could tell somebody knows about you. Oh, Gabriel, you went to the University School of Pharmacy in Maryland, X, Y, and Z. That means you did the due diligence beforehand. Not always is going to separate you in an interview process. That immediately sticks out. Somebody that researched the company, knows about the products, knows about what's currently going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they should probably, I don't know if this needs to be said, but they should probably stick to stuff that is public knowledge on LinkedIn or the professional websites, right? You shouldn't say, "Oh, I saw that you were born in, Colorado."
No,
Like
yeah, that would be awkward.
doing, not overdoing it. Like, don't overkill the trying to force a connection.
Yeah, don't.
Sticking to the professional modes where they were comfortable sharing that information with everybody.
I would stick to company information. Then I gave an example just of like if you were just meeting somebody in general, but no, you shouldn't bring up what school they went to and, oh, do you like growing up in this? That's probably
Yeah.
stalking.
Unless it's on the LinkedIn and it's something that connects you to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then they'll probably bring it up. They'll be, oh, I went to, University of Maryland. And then that's a bridge that you can
Yeah.
cross. But when it comes to the company information, I honestly would just take the company name, search it on Google, go to the news tab, and look at the new articles that are coming out of the company, right? Additionally, every quarter, there's earnings presentation. I would look at the earnings presentation.
And that's public knowledge?
That's public information
Oh.
that's available for public companies, right? And majority of the companies are public. So I would look at those earnings presentations, see what products are the main drivers of earnings, right, of revenue, because those are probably products they want you to be familiar with, right? You should be able to speak to those, knowing the CEO, knowing the motto, right? What's the company mission? Those are things that you can sprinkle in that will show like, oh, this person has done their research on us and knows what we stand for.
What about clinical trials or things potentially in the pipeline? Is
Definitely.
that available for research?
Yeah, clinicaltrials.gov. All these things are dependent, though, on what functional area you're applying to, right? If you're applying to a clinical development fellowship, you need to over-index on clinicaltrials.gov and knowing the clinical trials and knowing that therapeutic area and what's in the pipeline, because that's probably going to be a question. But if you're applying to policy and advocacy, maybe knowing some of the partnerships they've done could separate you from your other, applicants, right? So knowing what you're applying for is very important.
Very good stuff. Okay. The in-person interviews, are there any like tips or tricks where we can make ourselves more memorable in those spaces?
Well, if you're in the in-person interview, they they like you, right? They think that you're a candidate that they would be interested in selecting. So you want to be yourself. You want to be that person that showed up virtually. You should show up as that person during the in-person interviews, right? At the company dinner.
Mm-hmm. So the company dinner. So it sounds like you have the presentation piece, but they might invite you to come have dinner with the team.
Yeah, some companies will take out the fellows that are interviewing all to a dinner with, the preceptor, maybe the team that they're going to be working with.
Nice.
So
Okay.
I think it's important that you're not saying anything that's too, what's the word for it?
Taboo?
Yeah, right? You want to stick to things that are
Professional?
exactly.
So, thank you for filling everything. Yeah, I'm feeling it.
So you're so diplomatic. You are well trained. Good, they trained you well. You're so diplomatic.
Yeah, so you want to stick to that stuff. If you're social, be social, right? If you're introverted, you should show that you're able to communicate with people, and that's not a barrier for you, because I don't care what functional area you go into, you're going to be cross-functional. You're going to be working with different teams with different personalities. So if you can't talk to anybody at a company dinner or during a presentation in person, that probably is going to hinder. They're going to say, I can't really see myself working with this person. They don't speak that much, right? They're not very social, right? I can't see myself having lunch with them or talking with them at the, coffee machine. So
Yeah. And when I was a resident, this was so important for me to just be so mindful of, is that they're even watching how you're interacting with your peers. When there aren't people you need to be performative for, like trying to make an impression. They're observing how you're talking to your peers in the room, your competition,
Yep.
if you're talking to them at all, and the tone you're using, so all of that is being watched. If you are holding the door for somebody as you're going into the building, mouthing to the janitor, the person at the front desk, all of these things are a part of the interview, whether you know it or not.
yeah, that's something that in Pills they actually they had emphasized. I remember I was talking to George Opelman about it, and he was saying that you're always being watched, and so you have to represent yourself well, because you're always representing a brand. You're always leaving a imprint on whoever you're being with. So to your point, when you're walking down the hallway, while you're there, you're under surveillance, I would say.
Yes.
So when I say be yourself, I would hope that you're somebody that has manners, right? That you're somebody that knows how to hold a conversation with somebody,
Yeah.
knows how to differ an opinion with somebody and not create an argument, right? Those are just basic things that you should be showcasing, because those are transferable skills to your job.
Yes. Genuinely, we hope you're a good person at baseline. But if you're an introvert and it just is a little harder for you to just strike up conversations with peers, or if you're intimidated, and so that's why you're on the quiet side, and it just means be mindful that you have to push past that more than you are a little comfortable with.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Please.
And what I would remind somebody is, if you're at that point, they are interested in you. So that of course doesn't quell all of your insecurities or anxiety about the situation, because you do feel anxiety about it, right? But you should know that they're interested in you. They want to hear about your thoughts and opinions and your experiences. So at baseline, you can always just talk about the fellowship, talk about the functional area, talk about what you're interested in, talk about your experiences within pharmacy.
Yes.
Those are all things that if you were able to speak to it during the interview, you can speak to it now in a less pressured environment.
Yes.
So
Now, so we're coming again with strategic questions, but we are also actively listening, and we too are observing everything throughout the day, whether they're aware of it or not. Right?
Yep.
So, what are some red flags that we should look out for? We talked about like how we should not raise red flags for them, but like, what are red flags during the interview while we're there? Even like the earlier virtual ones and the one on site.
well, I think for that first round, when you're interviewing with the fellow, you should always ask them what type of projects have they worked on. And the project should sound like has some weight to it, right? That it was of some type of importance, especially the second year fellow, because the second year fellow is preparing to go, they already did their 1 year. They're probably preparing to go applying to roles or internally be transitioned to a full-time role. You really want to ask those type of questions to figure out if this fellow is actually is actually being given work that is good for their resume, good for the company. It's not busy work.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, the organization of the fellowship, you can kind of tell by the organization of, how they appear during their interview process. Are they aware of you? Are they aware of what type of program they have set out? Is it rotational? What type of project they expect for you to do?
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, fit is the most important thing. I know we listed a lot of the stuff on our Excel spreadsheets, but salary and location and this, but you have to want to work with these people, and they want to have to work. They have to want to work with you too.
Yes.
Are they excited about you?
Mm-hmm.
Are they excited about the experience you have? When you meet them in person, is the energy the same? Right?
Yeah.
That's important.
Mm-hmm.
I want this. You may be my number one, but I want you to be my number one choice too, right? So I want that the company and the people I'm going to be working with to be excited to work with me, to value my opinion, and I want to be able to see myself working there because you're signing a 1 to 2 year contract.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to like where you're going to be staying.
Yes. Whereas I'll put it, not hate your life.
Yeah.
Or, and anything that we might have missed in general that anything I failed to ask that you think is important for them to know.
I think that's it. I mean, we could touch on like the acceptance day, how that works.
Uh-oh. Okay. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So as I said, the standalone programs, right? They could offer you before, and you could accept before,
Yeah.
and you don't have to wait until this agreed upon. I think it's called AIFA day. That's like an affiliated like fellowship agreed upon date. If you are, waiting for that agreed upon day, I think all the applications go out at a certain time. Now, let's say you're a really highly touted candidate. You may get 3, 4, 5 offers, right? So you can only accept one,
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
right? So you can accept one, and then they have to go to their second choice or third choice, right? Usually the fellowship programs try to work these things out behind the scenes, right? This person said that this is their favorite program. They're our number one choice. They're your number one choice. Match made in heaven. So the rest of you should probably look somewhere else, right? But sometimes multiple offers are given to one person and they have to make that decision. And then the other offers are given later on in that day. So it's a really tense day. That day is like draft day. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a big day because, you're waiting, you wake up early waiting for if you're going to get an offer.
Yeah, okay. So that's important because going back to what you said, we don't want to give them that information to work with where they know what my favorite program is because they're going to make that decision for me behind the scenes if they know that.
Yeah.
Where if nobody kind of has an idea where they fall with you, everyone feels like you really want to go there, then you have more options to choose from when you see the offers.
To say that though, if a company says you are our number one choice, we plan on offering you. Verbal is verbal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do want the company to think that you would accept the offer. Like you can't be lukewarm. Like, you're interested in me, but I'm still looking up. They're gonna go for somebody that's like, no, I want to go here.
Wow.
So you still need to show enough, and that's why it's really difficult.
Yeah.
That probably is the hardest part, right? Is being able to balance that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a learning experience for sure.
That's where a mentor definitely comes in.
Definitely.
How to even respond to that. That's a tough conversation. Okay, so say you apply to a school affiliated program where there is like a universal day where we all get some type of notification, and you also apply to a institution specific, direct specific. Can you get that offer and say yes, and school affiliated comes out a month later, and that was actually your top choice?
So yeah, this is where it gets tricky. Like you can do that. It's probably not the best thing in good faith, right? You should probably accept, if you're accepting an offer, you should probably stick with the offer. Let's say you accept the offer a month early. They're not your number one choice. And that's what a lot of vendor programs will do. Like a vendor program may offer in October.
They snatch you off the market.
Yeah. So if you accept it in October, you could keep interviewing. Sometimes they know that you've already accepted an offer. So they may not want to they not push you into the next round because we heard Gabriel accepted at, this vendor, this CRO. So we're not going to continue pursuing you.
Yeah.
You should only apply to programs that you're really interested in applying to. But if it's a standalone program and it's a choice that you feel comfortable going with, I would accept it and go with it.
Okay.
Like we said, we keep saying this, 20% or less. So most people aren't even going to deal with this, right?
If you get in, get in.
Yeah. So
And just go out the flow.
yeah, I would accept an offer if it was given to me.
Okay. You get accepted. When is your start date?
Most fellowships start May, June, July of that. So after you graduate.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So after you graduate, some graduates have maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they transition over. But you can also talk to your fellowship. You can say, oh, I had a trip planned after I graduated. Could I start a week later, 2 weeks later? And they can talk to you about that.
Wonderful. Also not the case with residency programs. That's awesome. And I had a question, and it was regarding, this is what it was, because I just found this so interesting that getting board certified, taking your NAPLEX, is not mandatory for most programs. In the industry setting, you just need your degree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, for most programs, it's not mandatory, right? I'm board certified. The disclaimer. Now, because I'm really proud of it, because like you said, in a residency, you have a date for, right? So when you have to pass your NAPLEX and your MPJE, and if you don't, you're not part of the program anymore. So there's pressure on that. Now, on the fellowship side, you don't. So this is all just for wanting to be complete. So that's why I'm like, as a fellow, you should feel proud if you continue to, a certified pharmacist.
Yeah. And I think you did all of that work.
Yep.
And you have all of this knowledge fresh.
You may want to moonlight during your program, right? Work on the weekends.
Pick up some money.
But yeah.
Some hours.
So, it's definitely worth doing. You never know where life will take you. You may end up at a hospital or end up at a community pharmacy by choice, right? You may go to industry and say, I don't really like this. I'd rather see patients and interact with different people every day. I think it's always good to have that, especially now with MPJE, the test where now states, you don't have to take a specific state test. It's new. So,
You know what? Granny's been out of the game, so I'm going to have to look into that.
yeah. Yeah, North Carolina signed up for it recently, I saw.
So the states are determining if they're going to sign up for this. If you take the exam in this state, then it transcends to these other states that also agree.
It's like a universal test that you take, and it applies to each state that's a part of that signed up for it.
Interesting.
It's fresh new. I think it just started this spring. So some states are starting to sign up.
Awesome. You heard it here first, folks. Hot off the press. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you shared. They have it all from A to Z about what they need to be doing, no matter what stage that they're in this process. I feel like they are good to go.
Yeah, they should be good to go with this information. The tidbit I want to add is a fellowship isn't the end all be all, right? Just because you put a lot of time into this, right? If you're watching this video, you're probably really interested in this, and you're above the average student, because most people don't do that due diligence.
Yes.
Right? So what I would tell that person is, fellowship isn't the end all be all. A lot of pharmacists end up in industry through direct industry roles, through clinical roles, and transitioning into it to managed care residencies. So a fellowship, like I said, is only 20% or less. That doesn't end your story. You can always end up in industry. You can end up wherever you want to go if you continue to pursue that.
Gabriel's right. The fact that you're watching is already a sign that you are probably going to be doing very well in this process, because you're already taking the initiative. So we thank you for watching. I want you to stay blessed. We want you to stay blessed and stay curious. It's going to take you far. And we are out. You just watched an episode of Pharmacy Pathways, a podcast created to help current and future pharmacists find their happy place in life. I'm your host, DomThePharmacist, and I interview different pharmacists from various careers, asking them the questions you'll likely need answered in order to know if that particular role aligns with your interests, passions, skill sets, and talents. If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed and stay curious. I'm out.